It's a typically despicable statement from Donald Trump, one that once again demonstrates his complete unfitness for the office of President of the United States. We have, as you mentioned, 160,000 dead Americans in a shattered economy. There are more Americans unemployed on this date, on this August 7th, than there has ever been on any other August 7th in the history of the United States. And Donald Trump is out there bragging about how great the economy it is standing in front of a room of people who paid $350,000 for memberships in the golf club. It's just outrageously out of touch, but it points out to this larger dynamic of what's happening politically. The walls are closing in on Donald Trump. The number of people in the country that identify as Republicans is collapsing. And at the same time, the intensity of what remains is going up. But his world is shrinking. And across the country, what you're seeing in states like Georgia and Texas that have voted Republican for a generation, you're seeing very, very close races as Joe Biden is assembling one of the broadest electoral coalitions in American history. It includes Americans of all races and creeds and religions and ideologies, from Bernie Sanders to disaffected suburban Republicans who look at this travesty, who look at the most incompetent and inept president who has failed this country at a historic level. There's never been an American moment where somebody was tasked with responsibilities to protect the country that has failed as badly as Donald Trump has. And so as we get into September, we're going to see the next stage of this begin to unravel. And the tragedy's just beginning. We're going to see hundreds of thousands of dead Americans by the time this is over. Anybody with kids who are supposed to be in school understands if they're going back, it'll be for a week or two before the schools are shut down. We know that the mortgage and the eviction rates, the mortgage crisis that's coming is going to dwarf anything that happened in the Great Recession. So we're at the precipice of great economic tragedy and more death and more tragedy from the wreckage that the most incompetent person ever sit behind the Resolute desk has ever been. And once again, we saw tonight also, Brian, that Trump just conceives of himself as the biggest victim in America, that grievance and victimhood is the high-octane fuel of Trumpism. And you see that dimension of his character play out once again, just an aggrieved, brittle man. There are three issues that are an emergency for this country to deal with, and the only people left to deal with it are the voters, or the American people, American citizens, who have to rise up and repudiate this. And there are three specific aspects. Number one, this is the first president in the history of the country who has left the United States undefended against a hostile foreign powers attack. And it is an attack on American sovereignty, on our elections process, the peaceful transition of power that has gone on in this country since 1797. That's what our inheritance is as Americans. And we are here for a short time to be stewards of it, to make the union stronger and to hand it off to our kids and our grandkids. And that any president would abet a hostile foreign power doing that is horrendous. Secondly, the Russians have bounties on the heads of American soldiers in Afghanistan. Some have been killed, bounties have been paid. The President of the United States has refused to confront the Russians about it. Lastly, we literally have the term would have been useful idiots in the Cold War. Those were naive people, either by sins of commission or omission, who would do the work of the Soviet Union. So we see now useful idiots in the United States Senate that are passing off to the American people information that's incepted by the Russian intelligence services, intended to undermine faith in the American system, in democracy, and the elections process. We've never seen anything like it in the entire history of the country. So Lindsey Graham, who's involved in it, Ron Johnson, who's involved in it, these men are unfit to serve in the United States Senate. They have utterly violated their constitutional oaths, and it's particularly egregious for Lindsey Graham, who serves as a colonel in the Air Force Reserve. We've never seen such faithlessness to the ideas and ideals of the country and to the solemn oath that the country's most senior elected officials take for the honor of being able to preserve and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They have failed when it was their moment to be friends of liberty. We all share a belief that the country faces a real threat from Donald Trump, and we all believe this is the most important election the country's faced since 1864. When we see what Trump is doing, he's acting from a position of weakness. The deployment of militarized federal agents without badges, IDs, stuffing people into white vans, the assault on the election process, the shenanigans that are going on at the post office, his constant questioning the legitimacy of the election should he not win, his threats that he won't leave office. We've never seen conduct like this from an American president. It's fundamentally illiberal. He has an autocratic fetish. We've seen this administration assault the rule of law. We've seen these pardons and corruption that beggar the imagination. So much is at stake in this next election. What we should all understand in this country is that our freedoms, our democracy, it was all so much more fragile than we ever could have imagined, and that these institutions were not designed to be frontally assaulted by the President of the United States, the highest executive officer in the land, who's charged with fulfilling the founder's mandate to faithfully execute the laws of the land. And we just see a president who is checked out completely at every level, who is mentally, morally, and intellectually unfit for the job and is a real threat to the future of this country. And he's put this country into a tailspin of decline and weakness, the likes of which we've not seen ever in American history.